Have you ever encountered seemingly insurmountable obstacles and felt as if you are fighting this war alone with no way out? It's possible that you've tried to handle your problems on your own, working tirelessly without success, while your heart is filled with worry and anxiety. But what if I told you that there is a force that is considerably stronger than any challenge you encounter, a force that not only keeps you composed but also ensures your success, enabling God to defend you, remain composed, and have complete faith in His plan? This script is more than simply a set of words. It is an invitation to change your life by putting your faith and confidence in an all-powerful God. You will learn how to enjoy calm and let go of your faith in His supernatural intervention by going through each of these parts, and the victory that only He can offer before He starts. I want you to declare aloud with faith in God. May this declaration be the first step toward the life full of trust, peace, and divine purpose. Let's find out how your faith in God can eliminate all your fears and transform your life forever. Number 1. Trust in divine protection. Imagine for a moment being trapped between a huge sea and an army that is determined to destroy you. You have no way out, no rational way to survive. This is how the Israelites felt when they were in front of the Red Sea with Pharaoh and his chariots pursuing them. They had witnessed God work before. But at that moment, their fear was so great that they were unable to see past their predicament. They screamed, doubted, and even wanted to return to the Red Sea, Egypt, to the area where they were enslaved. Yet in the midst of their anguish, Moses gave them an almost unbelievable assurance. The Lord will defend you. This was more than a mere comfort. It was a statement and a promise that God Himself would step in a manner that no one could have predicted. This passage discusses both what the Israelites accomplished and what God did for them. It can also do for you. Maybe you're not in front of a literal sea, but we all face our own Red Seas, problems that seem too big, challenges that paralyze us, moments where we see no way out. It could be a financial crisis, a medical diagnosis, a broken relationship, or just the feeling of being stuck, not knowing what to do in those moments. The message of Exodus 14 verse 14 resonates strongly. God fights your battles. When God, He says He will fight for you, He is declaring His power and sovereignty. He does not need our help to open roads where there are none, to break down walls that seem impossible to move. He is the God who parted the Red Sea, who helped a young shepherd like David to defeat Goliath, and who protected Daniel in the lion's den. These stories are not simple ancient stories. They are living testimonies of what God can do when we trust Him. If He could do it, then what makes you think He can't do it now in your life? But here's the key. You'll be calm. This doesn't mean standing still, ignoring problems. It means trusting fully that God is in control. When we let go of our worries and surrender them to Him, we find a peace that surpasses all understanding. This is not easy, I know. The temptation to want to control everything is real, but the more we try to handle everything on our own, the more frustrated we get. God calls us to let go, to rest in His promise. That peace of mind comes from knowing that we are not alone in the battle. How we can apply this to our daily lives. It all starts with prayer. Talking to God and giving Him our burdens is the first step. Maybe today you need to get down on your knees and tell Him, Lord, this is the case. I trust You to pray. Keep in mind His promises and reflect on His word. It's too much for me to bear. It is crucial to surround ourselves with a community of believers, as this Exodus passage fortifies our faith and serves as a reminder of who is on our side. Sometimes, hearing of God's victories in others' struggles brings us peace. Testimonies of lives changed inspire us to think that we can experience the same thing in our own lives. If we have questions, it's all right. 2. God intervened despite the Israelites' reservations. Anyway, He doesn't need us to have perfect faith. He just needs us to take a step towards Him. God doesn't promise that we won't face problems, but He does promise that we won't face them alone. He's with us, fighting our battles, opening paths where there is no way out, knocking down giants who seem invincible. His promise of victory. It's safe. The question is, are you willing to trust Him, to surrender your anxieties, your fears, and your battles so that He can work today? Make that decision. Trust that the God who parted the Red Sea is the same one who can bring Victoria into your life, no matter how great the challenge, how dark the path seems. Remember, the Lord fight for victory is not only possible, and when he is on your side, victory is not only possible, it is inevitable. Number 2, stillness and trust in God's sovereignty. Be still and know that I am God. What powerful and peace-filled words do not seem to you? In the chaos, in the storm, in those moments where everything seems out of control, God calls us to stop, to be still. But it is not just any stillness. No, it's just about standing still. It's a stillness of trust, a pause that acknowledges that God is there, that he's in absolute control, even when everything seems to be falling apart. Think about it for a moment. When the psalmist wrote these words in Psalm 46, he didn't do it from comfort or calm. It was a time of conflict, probably war, when the nations were tottering and the mountains were shaking. But in between from all of that, God reveals himself as a refuge, as a fortress. It's as if the psalmist is saying, even though the world is crumbling around me, I can rest assured that God is here. What a great comfort, right? And the best thing is that this message was not only for the psalmist, it is for you, for me, for all of us who face our own storms today. Look, we live in a world that seems to be always going at 1,000 miles an hour. There is so much noise, so many demands, so many things that compete for our attention. And when problems come, our natural reaction is to try to solve everything on our own. We worry, we get stressed, we desperately look for solutions. But you know how many times all we need is to stop, breathe, and remember who God is. It is in that pause, in that stillness, where we can hear his voice, a voice that does not shout, but that he tells us, do not be afraid, I am with you. Now, being still does not mean standing idly by. It does not mean resigning ourselves or ignoring what is happening around us. On the contrary, it means trusting that God is working, even if we do not see him, trusting that his plan is better, even if we do not understand it. It is an act of faith, a recognition of his sovereignty, because when we recognize that he is God, we are saying, I do not need to have all the answers because I trust the one who has them. You know what is beautiful about it? That when we stop fighting our own battles and allow God to take control, we find peace, not a superficial peace, but a deep peace, that which surpasses all understanding. A peace that fills us, that strengthens us, that allows us to face challenge with confidence because we are not alone. God is with us at every step, every time. So how we can apply this in our daily lives, it all starts with a moment of pause, turn off the noise, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and tell God, Lord, here I am. I stop to listen to you, to recognize that you are God. Make this a habit. Take a few minutes each day to be in his presence, to reflect on his word, to surrender your worries to him. And when you feel that anxiety is not a problem, stress tries to take hold of you, remember this verse, repeat those words, be still, and know that I am God. As you practice this stillness, you will notice something incredible. Your faith will begin to grow, your trust in God will be stronger, and that peace that seemed unattainable will begin to fill your life. Because the truth is that no matter how big the storm is, God is always in control. He is sovereign, he is faithful, and his promise is clear. When we trust in him, he sustains us, guides us, gives us victory. So today, pause, give God everything that worries you, everything that weighs you down. Recognize his sovereignty, his power, his love, and rest in the certainty that he is God. Because in that stillness, in that trust, you will find the peace that you need so much. A peace that can only come from the one who reigns over all. Number 3, promise of presence in our battles. Do not be afraid or discouraged. The Lord your God will fight for you. These words from Deuteronomy 3 verse 22 are a direct reminder that we do not face our battles alone. Imagine the Israelites led by Moses facing powerful kingdoms and enemies that seemed invincible. Surely many of them looked at the magnitude of their challenges and wondered how we are going to achieve it. The incredible thing is that God never allowed them to face these battles alone. He promised to be with them, to fight for them, to open paths where none existed, and to assure them of victory. This same promise still holds true today. Even if our battles are not with armies or kingdoms, we face equally intimidating challenges such as illness, financial difficulties, family conflicts, and infighting. And in those uncertain times, God tells us the same thing he told the Israelites. Don't be afraid, don't be discouraged, I'm with you. When God says not to be afraid or discouraged, he doesn't do it by ignoring our emotions. He understands our fear, and he knows that we feel overwhelmed by situations that appear beyond our control. They urge us to put our faith in him, to remind ourselves that He is bigger than any situation, and to turn our attention from our limits to His boundless strength. This passage also has a deeper meaning. The Lord your God will defend you. This is the assertion of an active God, a God who is not only present but also actively involved in our lives, rather than a metaphor or a hollow promise. He doesn't stand by watching how we fight. He enters the battlefield. He opens paths, breaks down walls, and transforms impossible situations. Thinks about how He intervened in David's life by giving him victory over Goliath, or how He protected Daniel in the lion's den. Each biblical story is a testimony that when God fights our battles, the result is always victory. Now, how do we apply this in our daily lives? We must first learn to let go of control. This does not mean giving up, but recognizing that our strengths have a limit, but the power of God is infinite. Many times we try to solve everything with our own abilities and we end up exhausted, frustrated. God invites us to give Him our burdens, our struggles, and trust that He knows what He is doing. And we do this through prayer. Whenever you feel overwhelmed, stop and tell God, Lord, I can't handle this. I need you to fight for me. Besides, we must feed our faith. Faith is not something that just appears. It cultivates. Read His Word. Meditate on verses like this. Surround yourself with people who remind you of God's promises. When we remember who God is and what He has done for us, our confidence grows and fear loses its power. Finally, I want you to think in this. God's victory does not always look as we expect. Sometimes He does not eliminate the problem immediately, but He gives us the strength to face it. Other times, His victory manifests itself in ways that do not mean you. Trust Him, surrender your worries, and walk with the certainty that victory is assured, not because you can do it, but because the Lord your God is fighting for you. Number 4, surrender and trust in divine intervention. Commend your way to the Lord, trust Him, and He will act. What a clear and powerful invitation. This passage from Psalm 37 is a reminder that our lives are not meant to be managed with the limited forces of our understanding. It is a call to let go of control, and to place our decisions, our worries, and our future in God's hands. It doesn't mean it's easy. The psalmist probably wrote these words in the midst of a context of injustice, of persecutions that seemed to have no end. But in his struggle, he found the key. Not to try to solve everything on his own, but to give it to the only one who can do miracles, to the only one who has the infinite wisdom to address us. Notice that the word entrustment is not a light suggestion. It's an intentional action. It's like saying, Sir, here you have my whole life, my plans, my fears, my frustrations. I give it to you because I trust that you know what's best for me, and you know how beautiful that when we do this, something changes, our heart finds peace, our mind calms down, and suddenly the weight we were carrying doesn't seem so overwhelming anymore. Because we know we're no longer alone in this. We've stopped carrying a burden that we weren't designed to carry. Now that second part of the verse is just as important. Trust Him and He will act. This is where faith comes in, trusting. It's not just saying, God, I give myself to you, but truly believing that He is at work even when we can't see Him. That's because sometimes God's answers take a while to come to us, but I want you to keep in mind that God's timing is never a mistake. To Him, it's preparation. He is working on our vine in ways that we can't always understand, but in the end, everything works out for the best. What happens when we trust? God doesn't just act normally. He makes the righteous shine like the light. Imagine your life, your testimony, your decisions, and everything starts to reflect the glory of God. Not because you are perfect, but because you are perfect, because you have given your path to Him, and in that faith and surrender, God leads you, uplifts you, and places you in a position where His light shines through you, giving others clarity and hope. However, just as your salvation shines in the darkest times of life, it will also shine in the dark. God is present in your life, and His salvation is not something far away or abstract. Rather, it is real and tangible. He promises to save you, to give you hope, to get you out of those situations where it seems like there's no way out, and best of all, His salvation is based on His faithfulness rather than our abilities. How can we apply this to our everyday lives? First, learning to trust God in prayer can be as easy as saying, Lord, this is my day, I give it to you, guide me in every decision, and then trusting. It's not always easy, I know. There will be moments when you want to take charge again, But that's when faith comes in. It's a daily practice of reminding yourself that God is at work, even when you can't see it. The anxiety and uncertainty start to fade when you surround yourself with God's promises, so read the scriptures and think about promises like these. Finally, practice patience. Keep in mind that whatever He does in your life is always for your benefit and that His timing is ideal. I therefore encourage you to take that leap of faith today, to put your trust in the Lord, to trust Him because He will act. When He does, you will not only see His hand at work in your life, but you will also shine as a beacon for others around you, a beacon that shines with the assurance that God is trustworthy, that He keeps His word, and that salvation is always coming. These words from 2 Chronicles 20 verse 17 are a testament to what happens when we stop believing in our own strength and let God step in and take control of our lives. They state that even on the darkest nights, number 5, they will not have to fight in this battle. They will be able to put their positions and stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord. If one were a member of the people of Judah and 3 formidable, well-armed enemy armies were approaching them with the express purpose of destroying them, it made sense that terror would grip the populace. They asked what we can do, how we can win, but instead of surrendering to fear, King Jehoshaphat did something incredible, gathered the people, sought God in prayer, and recognized that the battle was too big for them, and it was then that the divine answer came. They will not have to fight. What an impressive message. Not because God was ignoring the gravity of the situation, but because He was making it clear that the battle was not a they, but yours. He was telling you, trust me, stand firm, and I'll do the rest. This is not a lesson for our lives. Today, we all face our own battles, maybe not literal armies, but they can be financial problems, family conflicts, illnesses, or even internal struggles that seem impossible to overcome. And in those moments, our natural tendency is to fight with all our might. We strive, we exhaust ourselves, we try to find solutions on our own. But God calls us to something different. He tells us, stop, let me fight this battle for you. You just stand firm and watch what I'm going to do. When God says, put your positions and stand firm, He's not talking about a physical posture, but a spiritual attitude. He's asking us to be ready to prepare ourselves through faith, prayer, and meditation on His word. To stand firm, it does not mean being passive, but being in a position of absolute trust, knowing that although the enemy seems invincible, God is already assured of victory. It is an invitation to focus on Him, to remember that our strength does not come from ourselves, but from the power of God who never loses from a battle. And then comes the most beautiful part. See the salvation of the Lord. This is key. It is not only that God, He fights for us, it is also about being attentive to recognize His work in our lives. Many times we are so focused on our worries that we do not notice how God is acting. But when we open our spiritual eyes, we begin to see those small and great miracles that remind us that He is with us. Seeing His salvation is a transforming experience. It gives us faith, it fills us with hope, and inspires us to testify of His power. What does this mean for our daily lives? First, that we must learn to surrender our battles to God. This requires humility because it involves recognizing that we cannot do it alone. In prayer, tell Him, Lord, this battle is yours, I trust you. Second, we must be strengthened in His word. When you stand firm in what He has promised, your faith solidifies and fear begins to disappear. And third, we must be vigilant to see. You may not see an immediate answer, but I assure you that God is at work even in the details that seem insignificant. So today, whatever your struggle, remember this promise: you don't have to fight alone. God is already on the battlefield. You just need to put your position, stand, and watch your salvation. He not only promises to help you, promises to give you victory. His power is more than enough for any situation you face. Trust, rest in His presence, and let Him be the one to write your story of triumph. Number 6, total trust in the direction of divine trust in the Lord of with all your heart and not in your own understanding. Recognize Him in all your ways, and He will make your paths straight. This verse from Proverbs 3 verse 5 has an impressive depth. It is a direct invitation to let go of control, to stop depending on our own limited capacities, and to surrender to God every aspect of our life. And although it sounds beautiful, let's be honest, sometimes trusting with all our heart is not easy. It is an internal struggle between our need to control and the call to surrender completely to His direction. Think about it for a moment. Trust it wholeheartedly implies more than words. It is a daily action. A constant commitment means giving God not only the big decisions like what career to choose or how to handle a family crisis, but also the small details of the day-to-day is to tell him, "Sir, guide me in this, show me the way because I can't see it everything, but I trust that you are an act of faith that requires courage because it goes against our human nature, the one that always wants to be in control, that wants to understand everything before acting, and here is the key. Our intelligence, no matter how advanced it is limited. We tend to think that we know what is best for us, that our decisions are completely under control. But how many times have we trusted our own logic, only to end up confused, frustrated, or even regretful? God calls us to something different. He tells us not to lean on your own intelligence. Let me direct your life because I see what you can't see. I know the path that you didn't even know existed. It's an invitation to let go of that burden of trying to understand everything and trust in His infinite wisdom. When He says recognize it in every one of your ways is not a simple reminder to pray once in a while. It's a call to involve God in every aspect of our lives, from our relationships to our goals, from our internal struggles to our smallest decisions. It's telling God, I don't want to take a step without you. And when we do this, when we recognize Him in everything, something amazing happens. He paves our paths. This doesn't mean that life it will be perfect or that we will never face challenges, but His presence will guide us, opening doors that we thought were closed and removing obstacles that seemed impossible to overcome. Imagine walking along a path full of stones that are difficult to travel and suddenly those stones begin to disappear. The path becomes clear and passable. This is how God smooths our paths. He not only directs our steps, but also prepares the way for us to arrive where He wants us to be. This gives us a security that no human strategy can offer. It assures us that even if we do not always understand process, the result will always be for our good in daily practice. Trusting in this way can start with something as simple as a prayer at the beginning of the day. Lord, guide me today, help me to make the right decisions and to see your hand in each step. It also involves meditating on your seek His advice before acting and be attentive to the ways in which He responds, even if those answers are not what we expected and something more important. Thank Him, recognize His direction in every achievement, no matter how small, strengthens our relationship with Him and reminds us that we are not alone in this journey. So if today you are facing difficult decisions or feel lost along the way, remember this promise: trust in the Lord with all your heart, acknowledge Him in every aspect of your life, and be assured that He will do what you cannot, smooth your paths, guide you with His wisdom, and take you to places you didn't even imagine. No matter how complicated the road may seem, now with God by your side, there will always be a way forward. Number 7, strength and comfort in times of fear. So don't fear because I am with you. Do not be distressed because I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will sustain you with my victorious right hand. These words of Isaiah 41:10 are a refuge for the soul in the moments of greatest fear and anguish. Imagine the people of Israel listening to this message. In the midst of times of uncertainty and danger, they could see armies advancing, oppression that seemed to have no end, and surely they wondered how we are going to overcome this, what will become of us. And in that context, God speaks to them with love and authority, reminding them that they were not alone, that His presence was with them. That same message is for you and me today, because even if our battles are not against armies, we all face moments in which fear tries to paralyze us. Maybe it's an illness, a financial problem, a broken relationship, or even an uncertain future. Those moments can make us feel small, unable to move on. But here's the truth. God is with you, not just close to you, not just watching from afar. He's with you, walking by your side, holding you up, growing stronger. When God says, don't be afraid because I'm with you, it's not a simple comfort. It's a powerful statement of His constant presence. He doesn't promise that we won't face problems, but He promises that we won't face them alone. To know that the Creator of the universe is with you, that His gaze is on you, that His hand guides you, fill your heart with peace, and that fear not is not a suggestion, it is a call to trust, to let go of fear, and embrace the certainty that He is greater than anything you are facing. And then He says, don't be distressed because I am your God. This is personal. It's not just a distant God or impersonal as your God. He knows you, loves you, and cares for you. When we are distressed, it is often because we feel that we carry the burdens alone, but God invites us to give them to Him, to trust that he is in control, because the truth is that we cannot handle everything on our own, and we do not need to. God tells us, "Leave your burdens with me. I am enough. I am your strength." Now notice this promise will strengthen you and help you. God is not only with you, he is active in your life. His strength is not symbolic. It is real. It is the force that allows you to get up when you thought you couldn't. It is the help that comes when you think there's no way out. Maybe you don't always see his hand in the moment, but when you look back, you realize how he was working, providing opening paths, and that strength does not depend on what you can do, but on who he is. He finally says, "I will hold you with my victorious right hand." This is an image of security and power. God's right hand represents his authority, his ability to overcome any obstacle. No matter how big the problem, his right hand is sufficient, and not only does he sustain you, he sustains you with victory. This means that you will not only survive, but you will overcome, because his victory is your victory. Then what do we do with this promise? First, we need to remember that we are not alone. The next time fear knocks on your door, respond with his truth. God is with me. He is my strength. Then give him your worries. Talk to him in prayer. Tell him what distresses you, and trust that he is at work. Even if you don't see immediate results, and finally stand firm in faith, God never fails. The promise to sustain and strengthen you is as real today as it was for Israel. So no matter what you are facing, take this truth into your heart. God is with you. He is your strength, and his victory is yours. You are not alone, and you never will be. Number 8, renouncing vengeance and trusting in justice. Do not take revenge, dear ones, but leave room for anger, for it is written, "Mine it is the vengeance, I will repay, says the Lord." What a hard truth. When you are hurt, when you are betrayed, the first thing we feel is the desire to strike back, to take justice into our own hands. It is natural, it is human. But here in Romans 12, verse 19, God calls us to something much greater, something that challenges our nature to trust him to take care of justice. Think about this. Paul writes these words to in the Christian community in Rome, facing all kinds of challenges, from internal conflicts to external persecutions. They knew what it was like to be mistreated, marginalized, and even betrayed. It is easy to imagine the desire many of them had to retaliate, but Paul, inspired by the Holy Spirit, reminds them of something crucial. Vengeance does not belong to us. It is a reminder that our emotions, however justified they may seem, are not the measure of divine justice. When God declares, "Mine is revenge," he is not denying our suffering. He sees our tears, knows our hardships, and is aware of every injustice we encounter. However, he wants us to have faith in God's timing and method of operation, as his justice differs from ours. God has an everlasting perspective. He sees everything we do, but we expect fast responses and results right now. We are unable to see and act with a wisdom that surpasses our comprehension, and there is something powerful about letting go of resentment and bitterness when we choose to let God handle justice. Let's face it, holding grudges does us no good. It's like drinking poison and hoping the other person suffers. It robs us of peace and takes us away from the full life that God has for us. However, when we let go of that weight, when we say, "Lord, I can't," but you do find a peace that the world can't offer now, we do not have to be passive in the face of injustice, nor do we have to tolerate mistreatment or disregard wrongdoing. Rather, we trust that God will act, and while we wait for his intervention, we can work on being instruments of peace and reconciliation, rather than contributing to the cycle of suffering. The Lord replies, "Look at the promise. I will pay." Although God does not forget or ignore injustice, his justice aims to make things right, and sometimes his actions might take us by surprise. He has the power to change people's hearts, make those who have wronged us repent, and use us as an example of his compassion and grace, because when we give up seeking revenge, we emulate Christ, who said, "Patron, forgive them, for they do not know what we do," on the cross. How can we use this in our day-to-day lives then? First and foremost, when you experience injustice, pray to God, express your feelings, share your suffering, and ask him to take charge. Second, reflect on what he has said. Keep in mind that he has promised to accomplish justice and that he is not fighting this battle alone. Third, make the decision to behave with love. I know it might be challenging, but when you choose peace over retaliation, you respect God and allow yourself the chance to develop and heal. Let go of your resentment or desire for vengeance today. Give it to God and have faith in His flawless justice, which is greater than anything you or I could ever conceive. Live in tranquility as you wait, knowing that the all-knowing, all-seeing God is working inside of you. Favor, He has the final word, and His word always brings life, restoration, and victory. Number 9. Rest and hope in God, my soul, in God only rest, because from Him comes my hope. He alone is my rock, and my salvation is my safe refuge. I will not slip. The psalmist chose to speak to his own soul, my soul, saying to himself, in God he only rests, because when the storms of life hit us, our souls need an anchor, a place to rest and regain strength, and that place is not in our own strength, nor in the fleeting things of this world. To rest in God is not just to stop physically, but to find a spiritual refuge in God. His presence is knowing that even though everything around us seems unstable, He is our immovable, firm, eternal rock. He doesn't seem wonderful to you in a world full of uncertainty where promises are broken and circumstances change. God is still our rock. He doesn't change, He doesn't know, and no matter how strong the storm is, His strength will always sustain us. The psalmist says it clearly, He alone is my rock and my salvation. There is no one else, there is nothing else we can put our total trust in. How many times do we try to seek stability in things like money, work, relationships, but all of those things can fail, yet God never fails. His salvation is not only for our eternal life, but also for our daily battles. He rescues us, lifts us up, renews us no matter how deep the fall. His hand, He is always there to save us. He is my safe refuge. I will not slip. What incredible security we find here. Imagine running to a safe place in the middle of a storm, a place where the waters cannot reach you, where the winds cannot knock you down. This is how God is for us. Not only does He protect us, but He assures us that while we are in His refuge, we will not fall. This does not mean that we will not face challenges, but even in the middle we will be firm in them, because our stability does not depend on our circumstances, but on their presence. And here is the heart of this message. Our hope comes from Him in a world that asks us to put our hope in things that do not last. God invites us to anchor ourselves in His faithfulness. The hope He offers is not temporary. It does not depend on what we see or feel. It is a living, safe, eternal hope. It is knowing that even if we do not understand what is happening today, He is working, that His plan is perfect, and that His purpose will always be fulfilled. This in our life, first we have to learn to stop and seek His presence. Can be through prayer, the reading of His word, or simply a moment of silence where we say to Him, God, here I am, my soul needs to rest in You. Second, we have to remember His fidelity in the past. Think of all the times that He has sustained you, that He has been your refuge, that He has given you hope when you thought there was no way out, and finally live each day with the certainty that no matter what happens, His hand holds you today. I want to invite you to speak to your soul as the psalmist did. Tell him, my soul, in God only rest. Give Him your worries, your fears, your weariness. Runs to His shelter, lean on His rock, and let His hope fill every corner of your being. Because with God as your refuge, no matter what you face, you will always be able to say with confidence, I will not slip. He is your rest, your hope, your victory. Number 10, prayer and divine peace. Do not be anxious about anything. Rather, on all occasions with prayer and supplication, present your request to God, and peace of God, who surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your thoughts in Christ Jesus. These words of Ensis 46 are like a divine whisper in the midst of chaos. Because let's be honest, life overwhelms us. Work, responsibilities, worries about the future. All of this may seem like an impossible mountain to climb. But here Paul offers us a radical alternative. Stop worrying and bring everything to God's feet. Sometimes our worries have solved something. The answer is never. Restlessness robs us of peace, drains us emotionally, and most importantly, keeps us from trusting the only one who is in absolute control. God does not call us to ignore our problems, but to face them with a different perspective through prayer. Prayer is not just a routine or a religious act. It is a direct conversation with the Creator of the universe, an opportunity to open our hearts and place all our burdens in His hands. When Paul says don't be anxious about anything, he is not being unrealistic. He himself faced persecution, imprisonment, and unimaginable challenges, but what he learned is that restlessness has no place when we recognize who God is. The key is in the rather on every occasion. This means that there is no inappropriate time to pray. There is no small worry or a situation too great that we cannot bring before God. He invites us to do so all the time with confidence and humility. The act of praying not only transforms our circumstances, it also transforms us. When you present your request to God, when you speak to Him from the depths of your being, something changes within you. Your thoughts begin to align with your will, and your heart begins to rest in the assurance that you are not only able to pray for God. The miracle occurs when God's serenity falls upon you, because He is in charge. It's an unexplained serenity that consumes your heart and mind. It's not the peace you experience when everything is in order. That serenity is a promise, not just an emotion. Even during the most intense storms, God assures you that He will provide for you. Our hearts and thoughts in Christ Jesus. This means that no matter how big the problem, your heart will be protected and your mind will be focused in a world full of noise and chaos where worries compete for our attention. This peace acts as a guardian, blocking out fear, doubt, and despair. How to apply this to our daily lives? First, practice bringing your worries to God immediately before the anxiety. Take control. When you feel that burden in your chest, stop and pray. Talk to God as if you were talking to a close friend. Tell Him what worries you, what you need, what you feel. Second, cultivate an attitude of gratitude, even while you pray. Paul doesn't mention gratitude here for thanking God in the midst of trials. It's an act of faith. That is, Lord, I trust that you are working, even if I still don't see Him. Finally, learn to wait in God for that peace that He promises. It doesn't always come instantly, but it comes, and when it does, it brings a certainty that cannot be explained, only to experience yourself. Remember, God's peace does not depend on your circumstances. It depends on your character, and your character is immutable, faithful, loving. Today, if you feel overwhelmed, I want to encourage you to try, instead of worrying, pray, ask for that peace that surpasses all understanding, and let God guard your heart and your thoughts, because His peace not only calms you, transforms you, strengthens you, and reminds you that in Christ you have a safe haven where you can always rest. Number 11, courage and trust in the presence of God. When God said to Joshua, "Look, that I command you to strive and be courageous. Do not fear or faint, because the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." It wasn't just a command. It was a promise full of purpose. Imagine for a moment being in the shoes of Joshua. Moses, the great leader, had departed, and now all the weight of leading the people of Israel fell on him. Conquering the promised land, guiding a terrified populace, and dealing with formidable adversaries was no easy task. Joshua surely felt fear and uncertainty, like any human being. I would do it. But God, in His infinite wisdom, did not leave him alone, but equipped him with these powerful words that are also for and for me. When God says be strong and courageous, He is calling us to action. Intentional courage does not mean the absence of fear, but moving forward in spite of it. It is getting up when everything inside you screams to give up. But notice that this effort and courage are not for our strength. They are based on the trust that God walks with us. It is a reminder that although the challenges are great, God's support is greater. Perhaps today you face something that seems unattainable, a new job, a change in your life, or even a loss. This verse tells you that you don't need to have all the answers. You just need to step boldly, knowing that you are not alone, that you are not afraid or dismayed. God knows our emotions better than we know that fear can paralyze us, and that hopelessness can rob us of the energy to continue. But this command is not a criticism, but an invitation to rest in your life. Be in the moment. Don't be scared. God is with you. Don't be discouraged. He gives you power. When we consider the situation, we might easily get afraid. However, we discover the strength to continue when we focus on God. The last promise in this passage is crucial. Wherever you go, the Lord, your God, will be at your side. This is not a simple statement. It is the absolute truth that His presence never abandons us in the darkest moments, when it seems that no one understands what you are going through. God is there when you feel inadequate. He is ready to strengthen you. His promise to be with you is an anchor that keeps our faith firm in the midst of storms. Imagine walking an unknown path, but with an expert guide by your side, assuring you that every step is in the right direction. That is, meaning that God is with you. His presence not only protects you, but also directs you. He goes before you, opening doors that seem closed, and sometimes even closing the ones that are not for you, because his plan is always better. Today, you can apply this promise in your daily life. Perhaps you are facing a challenge that seems too great. Perhaps you feel that you do not have what it takes to move forward, but God is telling you, be strong, be courageous. Do not be afraid or dismayed. Spend time praying and listening to his voice. Let these words fill your heart with confidence, because when you know that God is with you, fear loses its power and courage takes its place. Just as Joshua led boldly, trusting in God, you too can face your challenges with the certainty that he is with you, no matter how uncertain it seems the future. His presence is enough. Remember, it's not about how big the challenge is, but about how great is the God who walks with you. So move forward with courage and faith, because the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Number 12, renewal of strength through hope in the Lord. There are times in life when we just can't take it anymore. Physical tiredness, emotions that are exhausting, problems that seem to never end. Everything comes together and we feel powerless to continue. But Isaiah 43 reminds us of something incredible. Those who wait on the Lord not only survive, but are renewed. This verse is not just a pretty phrase, it is a powerful promise that can transform how we faced our struggles. When the prophet Isaiah wrote these words, the people of Israel were in exile. They were discouraged, far away of their home, feeling abandoned and hopeless. But God, through Isaiah, gave them this promise. If they would wait on him, they would be renewed like eagles that soar in flight above storms. And you know that promise still applies to you and me today. To wait on the Lord, it's not just standing still or resigned. It's an active waiting, full of faith and trust that God is at work even when we do not see him. Waiting means praying, it means seeking his direction, and above all, it means trusting in his time. Perfect. That waiting, although sometimes difficult, brings with it a profound renewal. It gives us back strength that we thought we had lost and gives us the ability to face our challenges with a renewed spirit. The image of raising wings like eagles is so powerful. True eagles do not wear themselves out fighting against the wind. They take advantage of the currents to rise up. This is how God wants us to face our battles. Instead of wearing ourselves out fighting in our own strength, he invites us to trust in his power to rise above circumstances. When we wait on God, he gives us a clearer vision. He helps us see our struggles from his perspective, reminding us that he is in control and that there is a purpose behind every challenge. And then that part comes, have you ever felt that you can't take another step? It's as if your whole being is asking you to stop, to give up. But God promises that by waiting on him, you will not only be able to move forward, but you will do it with renewed strength. This does not mean that there will not be difficult days, but that even on those days, he will give you what you need to imagine how this promise can be applied in your day-to-day life. Maybe you're dealing with exhausting work, family responsibilities that don't seem to end, or an internal battle that no one else understands in those moments. Waiting on God means seeking him in prayer, opening his word, and reminding you that he is with you. That daily connection with God is like a spiritual charger that restores your energy and gives you the ability to move forward. I have met people who have experienced this renewal in incredible ways. I remember a woman who, in the midst of a devastating medical diagnosis, decided to trust God completely. She told me that although she was physically weak spiritually, she felt a strength that she had never experienced. She said that every day when she prayed, she felt as if God lifted her up, as if she were literally flying above her storm. And so were you. If you are able to experience that today, I want to encourage you to put this promise into practice. If you are feeling worn out, take a moment to take your burdens to the Lord, wait on him, trust in his power, and allow it to renew your strength. Remember that God did not create you to live a life of exhaustion and despair. Rather, he wants you to run with purpose, walk boldly, and fly freely. Hope in the Lord not only renews your strength, but it also changes your perspective and serves as a reminder that there is always a new beginning in you. Number 13, closeness and deliverance in distress. When the psalmist wrote the words of Psalm 34:17, he was likely in the midst of a difficult situation, surrounded by adversity that caused him to cry out to God in agony. But in the midst of all that pain, he discovered something amazing: God's closeness and response. This passage is a live promise for you and me, not only for the psalmist. Remember that when we call out to God, he not only hears us but also releases us from our worries. He also reassures us that he is close by, particularly at times when our souls are hurt and our hearts are torn. The cries of the righteous are more than just air. It is an intimate conversation with a God who listens. Maybe you have really wondered, God hears my prayers. Let me tell you that yes, when you cry out sincerely from the depths of your being, God not only hears you, but acts. This does not mean that the placement is always immediate or that everything changes in an instant, but it does mean that God is working in your favor. He is moving the pieces, opening paths, and strengthening your heart as you wait. And here comes the incredible God, not only responds, he is near, he is near. Jehovah is close to the brokenhearted. You know what that means? That means that in your darkest moments, when you feel that no one understands your pain, God is there. He does not move away when you're suffering. On the contrary, he draws even closer. He is like a father who hugs his wounded child, who comforts him and assures him that everything will be okay, that it is the closeness of God. It is not distant. It is not indifferent. It is a God who engages in your pain and offers you his peace. But the passage does not stop there. It also tells us that God saves the contrite in spirit. For those who feel dejected and think they can no longer handle it, there is a promise of hope. The term repentant describes a shattered, modest heart that acknowledges its need. God steps in when we get to that point of humility. He not only gives us a new life and a new hope in our everyday lives, but he also consoles us, rescues us, and raises us from the ashes. It's also important to look for assistance inside the religious community. Talking to other believers about your struggles may be a tremendous source of hope and strength. This passage also encourages us to give up our worries to God. Sometimes we try to carry everything ourselves, but God asks us to put our worries at his feet because he can handle what we can't. Finally, it reminds us that even though we are in pain, we are not alone because God is close by, hears our cries, and promises to save us. If you're feeling down, broken, or lost today, I want to encourage you to stop and cry out to God, open your heart, and let him in. He will comfort you and set you free, because no matter how severe your wound or how heavy your burden is, God is with you, ready to act on your behalf. Put your confidence in his promise and let his love turn your suffering into evidence of his faithfulness. As he spoke to the crowd, he was not speaking alone. His words have reverberated through the ages, reaching our lives full of stress, obligations, and worries. Consider how many times you have felt like you couldn't go another step because of the weight of the world on your shoulders. Jesus' invitation is straightforward but powerful. Come to me no matter how you arrive. What matters is that you arrive. Jesus knows our burdens better than anyone because he lived among us and experienced physical exhaustion, emotional difficulties, and spiritual pressures. His invitation is not just for those who are physically exhausted. It is also an exhortation to those who bear the burden of anxieties, fears, and expectations to stop trying to bear them all alone, and to give them to someone who can manage them with ease. When we put our trust in him, we find rest, a rest that calms our bodies and our souls. However, what does bearing his yoke mean? In practical terms, a yoke is a tool used to bring two animals together by allowing them to share the burden and work together. Jesus does not promise that we will be able to overcome our responsibilities on our own. Rather, he walks with us, allowing his strength to sustain us and his wisdom to guide us. It serves as a reminder that it is not necessary to face everything on our own. Rather, he assures us that his yoke is light and easy. Unlike the weight the world places on us, Jesus' yoke does not crush us. Rather, it strengthens us, teaches us to live purposefully, to prioritize what truly matters, and to trust that even in the midst of our struggles, his grace is sufficient. We learn from his humility and meekness, traits that invite us to let go of pride and humility. Jesus provides us with a rest that is both permanent and fleeting. For our souls, a deep peace that remains even in the midst of chaos is the kind of peace that allows us to face challenges with a calm heart. Knowing that we are not alone when we carry our burdens to Jesus, He not only gives us relief, He gives us strength to moving forward renewed and focused on what really matters in our daily lives. This can mean taking a moment to stop and pray, surrendering our worries to Jesus before they become unbearable burdens. It can be a reminder that we don't have to do it all alone, that it's okay to ask for help and lean on the community of faith. It can also be an invitation to let go of perfectionism and embrace humility by trusting that Jesus will lead us on the right path. If you feel overwhelmed today, if you feel like you can't take it anymore, listen to these words of Jesus as if they were addressed directly to you. He says to you, "Come to me, let me carry what you can't, learn from me, and you will find rest no matter how heavy your burden is or how far away you feel from Him." His invitation is still valid. He is waiting with open arms to give you relief, strength, and a peace that the world cannot offer. What are you waiting for? Take your burdens to Jesus and discover the rest that only He can give. Number 15, renewal of strength through hope in the Lord. Isaiah 4:31 gives us an incredible promise, one that invites us to put aside exhaustion and trust in the Lord to find renewal. And not only were these words a comfort to the Israelites during their exile, but they continue to be a message of hope for us today. Imagine the emotional weight of a people who have lost their land, their freedom, and in many cases their hope. In that context, Isaiah proclaims that waiting on Jehovah is not an act of resignation, but a source of power. That same truth applies to our lives when we face challenges that leave us physically, emotionally, or spiritually exhausted. Waiting on the Lord is not passive waiting. It's not about sitting idly by waiting for something magical to happen. It's an active waiting, one in which we fully trust in time and God's plan. Waiting involves patience, yes, but it also involves faith. It's that ongoing trust that God will keep His promises in due time, and as we wait for something wonderful, it is as if God gives us a new breath, an energy that does not come from ourselves, but directly from Him. It is a reminder that although our strength is exhausted, God's are infinite. The prophet uses the image of the eagles to describe this process of renewal. The eagles not only fly, they rise above the storms, using the winds that others fear as an impulse to that is the kind of strength that God promises, one that not only helps us survive difficulties, but lifts us above them when we trust the Lord. He gives us a broader perspective. He helps us see our circumstances from His point of view, and from that height, our worries seem less overwhelming because we know that God is in control. The promise goes on to say that we will run and we will not grow weary, that we will walk and not be weary. Have you ever felt so exhausted that the idea of taking one more step seems impossible? This verse does not promise that we will never face exhaustion or difficulties, but it does assure us that God will give us the endurance to keep going. He does not let us fall. He gives us the strength to run when we need to move quickly and to walk when the road becomes slow and arduous that renewed. Energy is a testimony that with God there is always more to give, even when we feel that we can no longer in our daily lives. This translates into concrete practices of faith. Taking time for prayer, reflecting on God's promises, and surrounding ourselves with a community of faith helps us to cultivate that active waiting. We can also remember that God does not ask us to carry our burdens alone when we feel burdened. He invites us to surrender our worries to Him and to trust that His plan is good, even when we don't fully understand it. Waiting on God not only strengthens our legs to keep walking, strengthens our faith, our mind, and our spirit, allows us to see beyond the present circumstances and focus on the purpose God has for us. It is a constant reminder that even though our strength is limited, the strength of God is limited. We have all felt the feeling expressed in number 16, I will lift my eyes to the mountains. At some point, that search for support, that desire to find a hand to sustain us when circumstances seem too difficult to handle. The pilgrims who sang this psalm during their journeys to Jerusalem faced dangerous paths, physical and spiritual challenges, and that question resonated deeply in their hearts. But the psalmist does not stop at the question, but confidently proclaims, my help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. Raising our eyes to the mountains is not only a physical action, but a symbolic act of seeking something greater than ourselves, is to recognize that although the problems may be gigantic, there is a God greater than any mountain we face. When we lift our eyes to Him, we stop focusing on our limitations and begin to see the possibility of His divine intervention. It is a change of perspective, and let me tell you something, that simple act of looking to God can transform how we face our daily trials, because it's not just about looking, but about looking with faith, with the certainty that the help we need comes not from our own strength, but from a God who is all-powerful. The psalmist goes on to affirm that his help comes from the Lord, the creator of heaven and earth. Think about that. For a moment, we're talking about the God who formed the mountains, the oceans, the entire universe. If He has the power to create everything we see, what problem could be too big for Him? It's a reminder of His absolute sovereignty, that there's nothing out of His reach or situation that He can't handle. This should fill our hearts with peace, because it means we don't face our struggles alone. The Creator Himself is on our side to intervene and guide us on the right path. When we trust God as our source of help, we experience something extraordinary. Strength and security doesn't mean that difficulties will magically disappear, but it does mean that we will have the strength to face them. God gives us the resilience to persevere, and the peace of mind too. Know that we are not alone in our struggles. The beauty of believing in His promise is that He guarantees His presence throughout our life. Now, every step, even when the path becomes steep and challenging, involves applying this truth to our everyday life via doable deeds. How can we continually raise our gaze to God via prayer, meditation on His Word, and fellowship with other believers? We receive solace and guidance in such times of closeness with God. Surrounding oneself with a community of faith that serves as a reminder of these promises is also crucial. Sharing our hardships and hearing about other people's experiences of God's assistance helps us stay strong when we feel like we're running out of strength. Therefore, if you are feeling overwhelmed today, look up and realize that your help does not come from your limited resources or abilities, but rather from a God who is faithful and keeps His promises. No matter how big the mountain in front of you is, God is with you, ready to sustain you, protect you, and lead you to victory. Number 17, peace and tranquility in God's presence. Jesus' promise in John 14:27 is a life-changing gift. Peace I leave you, my peace I give you, I give it not as the world gives it. Imagine them knowing that their master would leave them, feeling that their lives were turning into a whirlwind. But in the midst of it all, Jesus gives them something that the world could never offer, a deep, lasting peace that is independent of circumstances. The peace that Jesus gives us is different from the one that the Lord offers. The world's peace is brittle and fleeting. It may arise from a good day, a situation that has been resolved, or even from a moment of relaxation. But as soon as a problem arises, that peace vanishes. In contrast, Jesus' peace is unaffected by life storms because it is based on what happens inside us, where its Spirit resides. When Jesus says, "Do not be troubled or afraid," He acknowledges that fear and anxiety are real, but He offers us an alternative. He calls us to surrender our emotions to Him rather than ignore them. Have you ever found yourself caught up in a whirlwind of thoughts? Jesus invites us to come out of there and find rest in His promise of peace. This inner tranquility is like an anchor that makes us feel like an anchor that we have been able to do. The peace that Jesus offers does not mean the absence of problems. It means that in the midst of them, we can feel His presence and His love sustaining us. It is like walking in a storm knowing that you are not alone, that someone stronger is by your side carrying you through every challenge, that peace surpasses all human understanding because it makes no sense from the logic of the world. But there it is, accessible to you, to me, to all who choose to accept it, to experience this peace. Jesus invites us to seek it. Prayer becomes our most powerful tool when we speak to Him. We give Him our burdens and ask Him to take control. Something changes within us, and it is not just an emotional change. It is spiritual. It is the certainty that we are in safe hands, that we must rest because He is in charge. It is also essential to meditate on His Word. Verses like this remind us of His faithfulness. Memory, overwhelmed, let it be a constant reminder that His peace is real and available to you. Whenever your thoughts become turbulent, return to this verse and let Jesus' words calm your soul. If there is fear in your life, face it with faith. Declare out loud that you trust in Him. No matter how bleak the situation seems, Jesus' peace can always light the path. Your faith is an act of trust that lets His serenity flow through you at every turn. You don't need to know everything. You just need to have faith that He is in charge. Jesus extends an invitation to embrace His peace today, not just a surface-level serenity, but one that permeates every aspect of your existence. Bring your responsibilities, anxieties, and anxieties to Him. Lay them at His feet and experience His calm, which is unmatched by anything else in the world. He is waiting with open arms to provide you everything your heart desires, so fill your life with peace and optimism. You simply must accept His offer. Along this trip, we have examined a number of biblical teachings and promises that serve as a reminder of the significance of the world. From trusting in God, staying calm in midst of storms, and recognizing that our victory is already assured, from trust in divine protection to renewing our strength through hope in the Lord, each section has shown us how God is actively at work in our lives, leading us to victory and lasting peace. Now it's your turn to apply these principles in your day-to-day life. When remember that you are not alone, allow God to fight your battles. Surrender your worries and trust in His infinite wisdom. In doing so, you will experience a profound transformation, finding a peace that surpasses all understanding and a renewed strength to face any circumstance. I invite you to close this moment with a prayer of surrender and trust. Lord, today I choose to trust in You above all my worries. I surrender my battles to You. I declare that my victory is assured in You. May Your peace flood my heart and Your strength sustain me in every step I take. Thank You for fighting for me and for never abandoning me in Your name. Amen. If this message has inspired you and you wish to further strengthen your faith, subscribe to our channel.